Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we explore interesting sources to pull out the key ideas, helping you get informed without getting buried in information.
And today we're diving into something quite unique excerpts from a Morning Murli. Specifically, one dated April 28th, 2025. It's a form of spiritual discourse, really.
Yeah, a very specific kind. So our mission today is to unpack the core message here. We're looking at ideas like soul consciousness, remembrance, and, well, the nature of the self and the divine as presented in these texts.
Exactly. We know you're interested in getting knowledge quickly, but also, deeply.
Right. So we'll give this structure and hopefully uncover some pretty thought-provoking points.
Let's jump right in then.
Okay, so the central theme, soul consciousness versus body consciousness. What's the absolute core of that distinction in this text?
Well, fundamentally, it's about where you place your love, your connection. Is it with the one bodiless one, which it
Mhm.
calls the Supreme Soul, or is it with physical bodies, which are, perishable?
And it has that line, which is quite striking. Even whilst seeing someone's body, do not see it. That sounds challenging.
It is. It implies a really deep shift in perspective, like looking beyond the temporary, the physical shell, to see the eternal soul inside.
Mhm.
And following that, it asks this key question. What effort must you make to clean your intellect? What is the sign of a clean intellect?
And the answer seems pretty straightforward in the text.
Yeah, it's direct. Becoming soul conscious is the way to cleanse the intellect.
So being soul conscious means what exactly, according to this?
It means truly seeing yourself as a soul, first and foremost, and directing your love exclusively to that one Father, the Supreme Soul.
Okay, so to contrast this with foolish intellects.
Yes, those intellects are described as being caught up in loving physical bodies, decorating them, focusing on the external. The message is that real clarity, true understanding, comes from identifying with the soul,
Not the body.
not the body. It's a recurring theme, this shift from the material to the spiritual identity.
Now, there's something about the speaker and listener dynamic here that feels different. It says the Supreme Soul, Shiv Baba, is speaking, and we, the souls, are listening.
Right, that's a key point. It departs from, say, typical guru-disciple setups you might find in what it calls other satsangs.
How so?
The body delivering the message, even this specific one mentioned, is presented as just an agent or a chariot.
Chariot, like a vehicle.
Exactly, a temporary vehicle for the Supreme Soul to communicate through. The focus isn't meant to be on the vehicle itself, but on the communicator and the message.
Okay, I think I get that. And then there's this analogy about inheritance.
Ah, yes, the inheritance of purity, of high status. The text is very clear that this inheritance comes directly from the Supreme Father.
Not from other people, other souls.
No, it emphasizes that other souls are like brothers, fellow children of the Father. You don't inherit from your siblings in this context. The inheritance is solely from the Father.
That really highlights a very direct personal connection then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Between each soul and the Supreme Soul. He's the singular source.
Okay, so building on that, the text talks more about the soul and the body, right? It uses this phrase about the soul entering the house, the body to play a part.
Yeah, and it likens it to house arrest, which is quite a powerful image.
House arrest. Why that term?
Well, it suggests being confined, maybe identified too strongly with the limitations of the physical form, forgetting the soul's true freedom and eternal nature.
Like getting lost in the role.
Kind of, yes. And it talks about the soul leaving one body, taking another, continuing its part through the cycle. And critically, it links being soul conscious through this process to achieving a higher status.
But then doesn't it say something seemingly contradictory? Like, you should not have even the slightest love for Baba's body. This body is of no use. How do we square that?
It sounds jarring at first, perhaps, but it circles back to the previous point. The body is just the chariot, the instrument.
Right.
The love, the remembrance, the focus needs to be on the Supreme Soul who is using the body, not the temporary physical form itself. That's the consistent message.
Okay, got it. Now, the text introduces this idea of the kingdom of Revan, a foreign land.
Yes, and it equates this kingdom with a state where intellects are totally foolish. And why? Because of body consciousness.
So this is basically the state of being lost in the material, unaware of the soul.
That's the essence of it. It describes this state as leading souls to become ugly, meaning impure.
Impure.
Spiritually impure. And the Father's role then is to come and provide the knowledge and method to make everyone beautiful, pure again.
And this ties into that cycle you mentioned, from pure to impure.
Exactly. It describes souls starting as Satoprohan, the highest, purest state, and then through stages descending into tamo, the lowest state of impurity.
And it mentions sitting on the pyre of lust as part of that decline.
Yes, that's presented as a key factor in this degradation, this loss of purity. It's quite strong imagery.
So it's a cycle, not just a one-way street. There's a return to purity.
It's definitely presented as cyclical. The descent happens, but then the Supreme Soul intervenes to facilitate the ascent back to purity. The beauty of Lakshmi and Narayan in the Golden Age is held up as that original pure state.
Okay, so if body consciousness leads downwards, how do we go back up? The text seems to point towards remembrance.
Yes, remembrance or yoga is presented as the key. Remembering the Father is the method for becoming pure again.
And it uses the term Trinatri.
Right, one with three eyes. That's a title for the Supreme Father, signifying his knowledge of the three aspects of time, past, present, future, and the whole cycle of 84 births. Though it notes this specific knowledge is given at a certain time.
84 births. That's a whole cosmology there.
It is. Understanding that cycle is part of realizing the soul's journey, according to this teaching.
But it also says this remembrance, this yoga, isn't necessarily easy, even for learned people, pundits.
Exactly. It makes the point that simply knowing the teachings, intellectually knowing the Murli, isn't sufficient to go across, to achieve liberation or purity.
He uses an analogy about that, right?
Yes, the pundit who knows things but doesn't necessarily connect. It's the consistent, heartfelt remembrance of the Supreme Soul that's seen as truly transformative.
And this yoga has benefits beyond the spiritual. You mentioned health.
It does. It links the practice of yoga, this remembrance, to improved health and even increased lifespan for the body.
But not the soul.
No, the soul is eternal, doesn't change size or anything like that. The benefits for the body are seen as a positive side effect of the spiritual practice.
And to help with this remembrance, it suggests keeping a chart.
A chart of your pilgrimage of remembrance. Basically, yeah, tracking your focus.
With self-monitoring.
Sort of. Noting when your mind wanders to friends, relatives, worldly things, just wasting time, versus when it's focused on remembering the Father. It acknowledges this takes effort, it can be difficult.
It sounds a bit like mindfulness, but with a very specific divine focus.
You could see parallels, yes, but the object of focus here is very specific. The Supreme Soul.
Okay, let's talk about love and attachment. The text is quite clear where love should be directed.
Absolutely. Towards the one Father, the beloved of all you lovers, that's the ideal relationship presented.
So attachment to other people, other bodily beings, that's seen as a problem.
It is from this perspective. It's seen as a sign that your love isn't fully directed towards the Father, and this misplaced attachment can actually hold you back spiritually, potentially leading to failure or a lower status. It uses the term moon dynasty.
Moon dynasty.
As opposed to the Golden Age Sun Dynasty kingdom, which represents heaven, the highest state.
So there's a real hierarchy there, and it contrasts this heaven with the current age, the Iron Age, calling it.
Extreme tamopradhan hell. Very stark language.
It really is. And it warns about attachment, especially at the time of destruction.
Yes, the idea is that if your intellect is attached elsewhere, not focused on the Father, when a time of great change or destruction comes, you might be, well, led to destruction is the phrase used. Lost, essentially.
That's intense. It even brings in modern things like being too concerned with fashion.
Being fashionable, overly concerned with physical appearance. It's framed as another distraction, another manifestation of body consciousness, pulling you away from the real task of soul consciousness.
And again, very strong imagery. Contrasting the current world as a brothel with the pure state, the temple of Shiva.
The contrasts are deliberately sharp, yes. To emphasize the choice between impurity, body consciousness, and soul consciousness.
Then it talks about shifting communities.
Yeah.
From Revan's community to Rama's community.
Right. Moving from a community characterized by stone intellects, dulled by body consciousness, to one of divine intellects, transformed by the Father's teachings.
And it mentions the Yadavas and Pandavas. How does it interpret them?
It offers a specific interpretation within its framework. The Yadavas are linked to Europeans or those who create destructive weapons.
Wow, okay.
While the Pandavas are the ones who follow the Father's directions and become victorious, the masters of heaven, it explicitly notes this isn't the understanding you'd find in, say, the traditional Gita.
That's a very unique take, linking those ancient names to modern contexts and specific groups.
It is. It seems to use these familiar narratives to illustrate its points about the consequences of different paths, one leading to destruction, the other to heaven within its own cyclical view of history.
And this heaven state is described as having limitless wealth, happiness,
Yes, a place where sorrow fundamentally doesn't exist. It's the ultimate goal, the result of making the effort to become soul conscious.
which, it keeps reminding us, requires effort.
Constant effort and remembrance.
Yeah.
But the payoff is liberation from illness, sorrow, and attaining that high status.
So let's get practical. The text offers specific guidance, this dharna. What are the key takeaways for actual practice?
There are two main points highlighted for essence for dharna. First, don't rely on or have excessive love for any bodily being. Focus that love on the one Father. Avoid getting trapped by names, forms, physical relationships.
That sounds like the core message repeated. Detached from the temporary, attached to the eternal.
Pretty much. And the second point is about that chart we mentioned.
Right.
Actively track your remembrance, be honest about distractions, about time wasted where your focus wasn't on the Father.
Okay. And then there's a blessing mentioned.
Yes, a blessing for maintaining balance between your physical duties, your worldly responsibilities, and your spiritual effort of remembrance. The idea is to be a trustee,
A trustee.
meaning you manage things responsibly, but without attachment, understanding that ultimately things belong to the Father. You're just looking after them, not getting caught in being just a householder lost in ownership. This balance, it says, leads to being constantly light and successful.
Light and successful. And there's a slogan too.
A very direct one for reaching the top status. Conquer the physical senses and conquer Maya.
Maya. We should clarify that. That's the illusion, right? The illusion of the material world that traps you in body consciousness.
Exactly. Conquer both the internal pull of the senses and the external illusion of Maya.
Finally, it mentions the Avyak signal. What's that about?
It refers to the combined form, Shiv and Shakti, the Supreme Soul and his power, often worshipped together. It emphasizes their inseparability.
Okay.
And the signal, the encouragement, is to remember your promise, the soul's promise, to be constantly with the Father in that combined state, to see this constant interconnection as a natural state of an easy yogi.
Easy yogi. Striving for that constant connection.
That's the idea, not a strained effort, but a natural state of being connected.
Right. So wrapping up this deep dive, we've really journeyed through these core ideas from the Murli excerpts. That fundamental shift from body to soul consciousness seems paramount.
Absolutely. And the practice of remembrance of yoga as the key method to achieve that shift and regain purity. We've also touched on the text's view of time as cyclical, moving between purity and impurity.
And those practical steps, focusing love on the Father, watching your thoughts, being a trustee.
So hopefully you listening now have a clearer, distilled understanding of these, well, quite complex and unique ideas presented in this particular discourse.
It definitely offers a different lens. So here's a final thought. Picking up on that Avyak signal, that idea of the constant combined form, what would it actually feel like, day to day, to live with that kind of constant awareness of connection to the divine? How might that perspective really change how you see things, how you act, how you react?
That's a deep question to ponder.
It is. And maybe, depending on what caught your interest, you might want to explore more about Maya or what this golden age represents in this teaching. Lots to think about.
Definitely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.